Hi, everyone. Welcome to Co-Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Boston, and we have a great guest on today. I'm so happy to welcome Dr. Natalie Tinney. Natalie is a half Canadian, half Peruvian, born in the U.S., physician. She's even doing her residency training in internal medicine, half in Peru and half in Canada. She does storytelling and stand-up. She's an author. She's written short fiction and nonfiction stories in publications in international journals. You can find her in Calgary, Alberta. That's where she does most of her stand-up and spoken word. She's kind of a force of nature. I mean, you guys will see what I mean when you listen to this podcast. She said her writing process is she just sits back and waits for things to happen to her. Yeah, I think it's working for her. So enjoy this whirlwind of a chat with the lovely and talented Dr. Natalie Tinney. I'm so happy to welcome our guest, Dr. Natalie Tinney. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boston. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay, well, I'm so excited to meet you and have you on my podcast. Before we get into medicine or comedy, I want to start with your origin story because it's interesting and you've been a lot of places. So I know you say you're a Peruvian Canadian, but you weren't born in either country. Can you tell us just your origin story, where you came from and where you are now?
I am half Canadian. I'm half Peruvian. I wasn't born in either of those countries. I was born in USA. Bit of a glitch in the matrix. I have no family there. When I was 0, I moved to Ontario. I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario. I was there until I was 15. And then when I was 15, I moved to Lima, Peru.
Okay, I'm going to do a little summary here. Natalie was in Ottawa until she was 15. Then she moved to Peru for high school. But high school in Peru only goes to grade 11. So she finished high school at 16 and then went directly into medical school, as you do, in Peru, which was a 7-year program. She finished that, and then she had a mandatory 1 year of what's called rural service, which apparently is a small town in the Amazon rainforest. So she finished that, and then she had plans to maybe come to Canada and do a residency in Canada. But then the pandemic happened, and that became very difficult, changed everyone's plans. So she took a job working as a physician for an insurance company in Peru. And then she got the call to go and work in a COVID ward in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. So that's where we're going to pick things up because it's a pretty amazing story. Okay, because you wanted to help people or because you just wanted some action?
Wanted some action. And also, I tell people, do you know how boring and how unstimulating your job has to be for you to get excited to go work in a COVID ward?
Yeah. I misunderstood that. You worked for an insurance company as a physician.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There was a 6-9 month stint where after rural service, I got a job and then I got another job. It was a little bit of a precarious employment time. I know that the pandemic was devastating for a lot of people in a lot of ways. For me, at the very least, it was an opportunity for me to leave desk job and get back into what I actually studied. This is a bit of a crazy story, actually, because one very ordinary Friday afternoon, I got this call and they were like, "Hi, are you Dr. Natalie Tinney?" I said, "Yes. Could you come right away to the Ministry of Health? I need you to come right now because the plane is going to be leaving shortly." What? Okay. So I get in a taxi and I get all the way down there. And there are also a lot of people that were just waiting in the lobby and we're like, "Were you guys called too?" This is a very, very weird situation. And then they're like, "Okay, listen," they put the contract in front of us. "This is the contract. Read it. Hopefully we'll get you guys on the plane soon. And any questions?" Yes. One very important question. "Where are we going?" "We haven't decided that yet." And we're like,
"What?"
And I was thinking in my mind, this is weird. Sign me up. And then I was like, okay, so the thing is, though, is that continue on the rural service thing. I was still single. I was without kids. I didn't own any property. I felt like I was the most indicated person for this type of job. I wasn't tied down to anything. Then we signed the contract and I leave and I called my parents who were in Calgary and I said, "Mom, Dad, guess what? I signed a contract with the ministry." They're like, "Natalie, you did what?" And I said, "Calm down." I said, "Listen, I read the contract. It's very straightforward. And I think it's a win-win situation," I said, "because if I die, you guys get a free house."
That was in the contract?
Yes.
A free house for your family.
It's a very, very vague term. In English, it would basically mean living quarters. Basically, if we die, our family has to receive like as compensation, a living quarters. So that is a very vague term. It could be a house, it could be an apartment. The dimensions and things like that like aren't actually specified, but it's a property. If you're gonna get a property, like what more would you
You
ask
lose
for?
a daughter, you gain a house. Actually, in the Toronto area, a lot of people would probably sign right up for that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure like my net worth compared to the net worth of a house in the Vancouver or Toronto
Yeah,
area.
I think they're taking firstborn as down payments right now for houses in Vancouver.
Exactly. And
I
I'm
think
the
it's
eldest.
true.
And I'm the eldest of
You're
three.
just eliminating the middleman there. And that was your mission to the Amazon.
Right.
This
Okay,
is what
yes.
happened.
Rural service was one thing. That was very organized. I had a travel date.
That was the Amazon. That's rural service. I love that it's called rural because the Amazon's not like when I think of rural, I think of like a small town.
Well, this was a small town in the Amazon jungle.
Yeah, I feel like that's different. But anyway, that's okay. That's what they called it. Okay, so this trip where you could die, but your parents would get a house, so it'd be fine. Where did you end up going?
It was actually funny because then it was Friday afternoon. We're like, okay, but then there was the weekend, and we had to spend all weekend thinking, where are we going to go? Watching the news, seeing where the devastation areas were. On Monday morning, we show up and we get introduction sort of thing. And they're like, oh, where are you guys going? And the whole auditorium in unison, we don't know. What happened was we were discussing amongst ourselves, a very big area that was devastated was Iquitos, which is a major city, but it's in the Peruvian Amazon and it is not accessible by car. So there's no highway that goes there. We were thinking that was going to be it. That night I went to bed. I don't know what happened. I woke up in the middle of the night and it occurred to me to check my phone. They said, please be ready with a suitcase no larger than a carry-on and the military base because the flight to Yurimaguas is leaving at 8 a.m. sharp. See you there. I was like, okay.
Is that the place?
The place is Iquitos. Yurimaguas is like 3 hours down. But remember, Iquitos has no highway. But Yurimaguas is in the highway system. We're like, okay. People were very worried about me, but I tried to like keep it very funny and like humorful. I sent them like the GIF. Like I know Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling is canceled and all that. Like the sorting hat. Please don't be Iquitos. Please don't be Iquitos. Please don't be Iquitos. Are you sure, Natalie? Iquitos would lead you on the way to greatness. It's all here. No.
So why didn't you want to go there?
Okay, so because they're not in the highway system, it's an isolated city, if you can imagine that. And in all the Peruvian areas, they were the most devastated by the pandemic in the first wave because oxygen couldn't get in. It was very difficult to bring oxygen, very difficult to bring ventilators, very difficult to bring medication. Like people were very worried about me. I was worried about me. I wasn't sure like what could happen. There were also healthcare workers that were also getting COVID and getting very sick and even dying on the job. So I was a little bit worried.
So this is pre-vaccine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm talking May 2020.
Okay. So this is just like everything's happening. And if you died of COVID, would your family get a house?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, just any death for any reason. Okay. So that's good. So we're back on board. It was interesting because I was thinking, maybe an isolated city would be good if they could shut it down and keep the COVID out. But I guess there's no keeping it out.
Once somebody had arrived, I guess there was like a case zero there. And then it was absolutely devastating. It was horrible. And so returning to like the sorting hat thing, it was like, well, if you're not Iquitos, okay, well, then better be Yurimaguas, which is a place that is also in the Amazon, but further south, and it is in the highway system. When I got there, it was a very difficult job. My challenges there were just wearing the full PPE in like 37, 38 degree. The funniest part of that job was actually traveling there because we got there. There was no like attendance sheet or anything. We literally showed up at the military base and said, are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? Get in there. We boarded this plane and it wasn't a commercial airline. It was a military cargo plane. For those that aren't familiar with that kind of aircraft, it's like basically like a pop can with like 6 air holes. So it's very dark in there. We had to board it class photo style. Tall people in the back, shrimps in the front. All right, let's go, folks. Is shrimps offensive to short people? I don't know. My dad would always
I don't know. You're right. I can tell you're younger than me because you're You're worried about getting canceled. It's going to be okay. I think you can say it. It's fine. We can even talk about Harry Potter. It's okay. It'll be okay. I know some people are mad, but it's okay.
We get into this plane and the girl next to me, like very innocently, like finds a seatbelt and starts like buckling it in. And the captain comes on the mic and says, no, take that off or else we're not all going to fit.
And really, like with the seatbelt, if you went down in the Andes, is your seatbelt going to help you?
Exactly.
Maybe that's what he was saying. He's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Either this thing's going to land or we're all going to die.
Exactly. So the work itself, like I said, like the challenges, like I think they were pretty straightforward. I came back. I continued working in the pandemic, but I was also looking to do like residency in Canada, and I was doing the exams, which like it's a very expensive process. I'm not sure what it would be like for veterinary medicine, but for like human medicine, it's like a huge investment.
Yeah, no, I think it's similar. You have to do exams and you have to do practical exams and written exams. It's difficult because we have a shortage of nurses, doctors, veterinarians in North America, but then they have to keep it to a certain standard, which I understand, but it's hard to bring those professionals in. You're a doctor, and then you did, sounds like I'm just going to say some kind of crazy jobs in Peru.
Yeah.
Some exciting, some boring, like the most boring and the most exciting jobs, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Like desk job, insurance company, and then you're like flying into the middle of nowhere at a COVID ward. So that's the most opposite ever. And now your family's in Canada, or is half your family in Canada?
Okay, so my immediate family, mom, dad, bro, sis, they're in Calgary, Alberta.
Okay.
My extended family would be in a place called Aurelia.
Okay. A lot of our listeners may not know, but it's in Ontario. We'll just say it's in Ontario, north of Toronto. Could you have done a residency in Peru, or is that?
I was actually just getting to that part.
All right.
So and I was working in the pandemic, and there was a residency admission coming up. It's in Peru. It's very different in Canada because in Canada, it's very algorithmic. There's the match columns.
I know about the match.
In vet medicine, do you guys have a match as
Yeah,
well?
we do for residencies. It's horrible.
Wow.
It's different than yours, but also horrible. Yeah, I think they're both horrible.
In the sense that you have to put the exams, and then there's your grades, your extracurriculars, your personal statements, your recommendation letters, and then you apply to a bunch of programs, and then just like Tinder, you're swiping right, they're swiping right, and then it finds like some sort of compatibility, like a match. In Peru, I can only describe it as like the Olympics, where everybody shows up, they write an exam, and they post a ranking.
Oh.
Like if you're in the top spots, you're in. Very challenging, but in a very different sort of way. It was still the first year of COVID. And I was thinking, I would like to get on with my life, I said, because in Peru, like being a general physician, general practitioner, which is different from being a general practitioner here, because here, general practitioners have a residency in family medicine.
Yeah.
There, like you don't have a residency, and it's quite challenging. Like it's a little bit scarce for when you're a general practitioner because people more are looking for specialists. So I said, I want to get on with my life and I want to start doing a specialty. But the thing is though, is that I had my radar wide open because I would always be asked, what do you want to specialize in? And I really did want to be a psychiatrist. And I went to medical school. About halfway through, I made that decision and I finished medical school still with that idea. But I wanted to pursue generalism as a career. I didn't want to focus on like one thing, because if I focused on one thing, I'd be missing out on the rest.
That's FOMO. You have medical FOMO.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what FOMO is?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly medical FOMO.
You can have that. That's for you. Because I remember you said something about like, it's weird to be studying. You just want to be a psychiatrist. And you're like, I just want to know what the brain, I don't really care about the liver and all these other things.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Now, good thing you paid attention, because internists have to know about all that.
Yeah, exactly. I did internal medicine. And the crazy thing is, I realized that I made the right choice because I really do love doing a bit of everything. And I like how every day is different.
Okay. So now I have a question. Your residency is based in Peru.
Yes.
But you're doing rotations in Canada. And then when you're done, where can you practice? Can you practice in Canada if you want to? Or are you just going through that?
So I passed the exam.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh,
Difficult.
Thank you. It was a very, very long process. I'm choosing my words carefully. What if like the MCs, the Medical Council of Canada, are like listening in, or like for the match, like somebody's going to Google me and find this.
Oh, I don't think they're listening. They don't care about my podcast, Natalie. No, it's okay. You're already through. You passed. You're good, right? No, there's more.
Okay, there's more. Yeah. Now that I've passed, I'm ready for the match, if that makes sense.
Oh, so wait. So you're doing your residency basically in Peru, even though you're doing stuff here in Canada. But you would have to go through the match again here. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh
It's not that I would have to. It's not that I would have to. I've been researching, and there are ways that you can do, if you're bringing a specialty, that you can do more exams and more things. For me, like the match would be the best way to like get into the system, because I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to continue internal medicine or if I'm going to pivot to family medicine or psychiatry. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet, and I have to get on that because I only have a couple months left to decide that. It's also the easiest thing. Can you imagine if the match is the easiest thing?
So easy.
If the match is the easiest, you can only imagine what the other option is. The reason I've come here is because in third year, like we had the option to do international rotations. And I also wanted to get experience in like hospitals in Canada and see what the healthcare system is like here. Like the technology is 20 years ahead of what there is in Peru, which is crazy. It's been crazy for me. I think medicine is like that. When you're in a position that you don't know what's coming next in your career, like you have to rely on the advice of your mentors and your preceptors. And a lot of preceptors that I spoke to that had done medical training in other countries and then came to Canada, they said, I think maybe the easiest way, Natalie, would be for to do your training again. At first, that's like a really like, what? All those years wasted, but not quite. The years of experience you have, like no one takes that away from you.
Yeah. Kudos to you. I'm going to pivot now.
Absolutely.
I think I have some idea of this. Based on your origin story. Now I want to talk about stand-up comedy.
Absolutely.
So when did you decide, okay, I'm doing all these things? When in this process did you decide, or maybe it was before, when did you decide, I think I'm going to try stand-up comedy? When
I was growing up, I really like enjoyed stand-up comedy, like George Carlin and Chris Rock and that sort of thing. Like I really enjoyed that. When I was 16, so I was actually still in high school, I did my first routine. It was during a visit to Canada in Ottawa. I have a mentor in comedy. Her name is Rebecca McDonald. Hi, Rebecca, if you're listening. She is a stand-up comedian based in Toronto. Well, at the time we were in Ottawa. And she was a stand-up comedian. And that made me realize I liked watching the professionals on DVDs. And then I knew somebody that was getting herself into that career. I was like, oh, so anybody can do this. But that's the first part, how you can get in. But then I'm like, okay, but I'm going to try writing my own jokes. And I realized that there are a lot of open mics where people do this. In Peru, because like the language kind of thing, because most of my stand-up is mostly in English. There aren't really like open mics in Peru, or not that I'm aware of. It was more a thing that I would do every time that I would come to visit, which would be once a year or once every 2 years. I always tell people I'm really excited to travel to Canada because every time I'm there, I'm always trying to get myself into open mics. When I say open mics, a lot of the time, it's just me shouting jokes over people while they're drinking beer and eating nachos and that sort of thing. I've never really considered myself like a professional by any means.
So you didn't get into it because of medicine, because you decided really early to be a doctor, but it sounds like those two things were kind of just happening in parallel, kind of at the same time, even though, I mean, you didn't have as much access to do it in Peru. You do some jokes about being a doctor. How do you think those two things, medicine and being a comedian, kind of interact with each other?
I think like when you're a kid, like going to the doctor can be quite like a nerve-wracking experience. But I realized that it would be a lot easier for me. My favorite memories of like going to the doctor would be like if the doctor was funny. And especially for kids, humor, it really helped on a personal level. I think like the stand-up comedy has helped because if I go through like a negative experience in my life, I can find ways to make fun of it and then I'll turn it into a routine. I can put it out there in stand-up comedy. In terms of like in a professional way, in a negative situation. Just try and make people laugh and make patients laugh. And I think that's just something that I enjoy. Patients hopefully enjoy it too. It's not always appropriate. I think you probably have that as well. I'm not sure how, if you, Sarah, like apply humor in your practice, especially with like oncology and veterinary medicine, like it must be very like challenging.
It's different because it's not like you're necessarily telling jokes, but I do a lot of maxillofacial surgery and the dogs end up looking different. They don't really care. Like they don't care, that they have a big jaw tumor. They don't care. I just try to tell my clients, like, you're going to have a sense of humor about this. You're going to have to roll with it because your dog doesn't care. Make up a new breed for your dog. When people ask you, like, what breed is that? Make up something funny and just, otherwise you're going to be a bit miserable, and be sad all the time that your dog had a jaw tumor. So I definitely would say I bring humor in, but it also depends a bit on the client if they're open to that. So some of them are more open to each other, but I think it's a good way to break tension. There's always a lot of tension. People are sad. Their dog, ironically, the dog often has no idea what's going on or why their owner's sad. But I think it is a really good way to break tension with clients and just make them realize, like, yeah, this is sad, but let's find what's good. And most of the dogs do a good job of that. My patients do a very good job of just kind of being in the moment. Do you joke around with your clients? Like you said, you like it when you were a patient. You kind of liked doctors that would break the tension, I guess, or have some humor. Like, do you find you make jokes or at least bring humor in with your patients now?
If I can, like I said, it's not always appropriate. So you really gotta, it's an art, right? Because when you're at like the stand-up comedy show, everybody's ready to listen to your humor and you're also ready to be judged if what you put out there is funny or not. But when you're in front of a patient, you have to know, because a lot of times if the diagnosis, sometimes it's a sad diagnosis and it's just not the right time for humor. But at the same time, like if they're nervous, I'll just tell you, it's okay. You don't have to be nervous because I'm really nervous too, or something like that. Right. So something to kind of break the tension.
Yeah. No, I like that.
I don't know if veterinary medicine has these, but in human medicine, there are a lot of jokes that patients are like, oh, I'm going to tell you a joke, doctor. Okay. And then I'll listen. And then it's something like you've heard like 1,000 times before. There's one that patients always tell me, like, if they're in the hospital and like we take off their bandage, the hairs come up. They're like, oh, do you guys charge for waxing here?
That just makes me laugh because it's so lame, but I kind of love it. As soon as you said that, I knew exactly what you were going to say, which is actually not funny because the whole point of a joke is that they're surprised. But I knew that people would, that's just human nature, right? So for us, it's every time we take a dog's temperature or do a rectal exam, they just say the same things and it's awful. Like it is absolutely horrible. Like the big one is like, are you going to buy him dinner first? And like, it just makes all veterinarians just like, oh my God.
Like, there's also one where like, I'll be like, hello, how are you? Well, bad, duh. Like,
yeah.
And then like, I have to laugh because they think that this is like ha ha. Like, I was trying to be nice. And now I've heard this joke 1,000 times before. A joke that patients always tell me. They're like, oh, doctor, I'm going to tell you this hilarious joke. This is so, so funny. And I'm like, okay, let's hear it. So a patient comes in and the doctor tells the patient, well, I have 2 pieces of news for you. One is bad and the other's worse. Which do you want to hear first? No, I think I should hear the bad news first. Okay, well, the bad news is you only have 24 hours to live. Oh, man. And what's the second piece of news? Worst piece of news is that I was trying to get a hold of you since yesterday.
So clients say that to you or patients say that to you?
Yeah.
But do they know that you do comedy or they just want to tell you a joke?
They just tell me, they just like, oh, doctor, can I tell you a joke? Because this is so funny.
That's so weird.
I've only heard that joke about 60,000 times.
I love that though. I kind of love that. Because at least it's not sexual. With the rectal stuff, there's always some weird sexual thing that people say to me. And I just am like, oh my God. And then like I try to teach veterinarians because I'm a specialist that they have to do a rectal exam as part of every physical exam. And a lot of people don't do it because they can't deal. They're just like, no, I'm not doing it.
It's like that in human medicine too. So yeah.
Really?
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky. I've never had I've read or heard about sexual jokes. Like I personally think that there's a time and a place for that sort of thing. And that is definitely not it.
It's not with your doctor. Yes.
But going back, like, I think when the patients, like, they tell me these jokes and they're lame jokes, but for them, like, humor is helping them.
Absolutely. I kind of find those reasons I was laughing so hard is because they're kind of charming and sweet, and they're obviously those people are nervous and they're just trying to find a way to deal with it with a really lame, almost like a dad joke. But something about that I find very charming. So as long as they don't, I've had people say, like, when I'm doing a rectal, like, oh, he likes it like his daddy. And I'm like, I can't, like, I feel like at that point I just want to go home. I'm just like, I'm done. But cringe, it's cringy. So I think if it doesn't make you cringe and it's a lame dad joke, more power to them. Hey everyone, I just want to give a quick shout out to our exclusive title sponsor, Hill's Pet Nutrition. They are just a fantastic nutrition company for pets. They have a new diet out called Onc Care. And I am a veterinary surgical oncologist, so I treat pets with cancer. I also had a dog that I lost to cancer. His name was Rumble. People who know my story with Rumble, how difficult that was. And at the time, it was really hard to know what to feed him. So this is a new diet for animals with cancer. It's very digestible. It's got a high nutritional content, and it is very good for their microbiome. So I really wish this diet had been out when I was going through my journey with Rumble, but definitely something that's great to have available. So thank you, Hills, for everything you do, and thank you for being a sponsor. I just have so much gratitude for your help. We really couldn't do this podcast without you. I know you said, oh, I didn't do it. I did it kind of intermittently, but you've been doing comedy for a long time. What is your joke writing process?
I personally don't like sit down and write jokes. I wait for things to happen to me, or I wait to make an observation. I think most of my humor would be observational. They just see something and be, oh, that is funny. And I think other people would find it funny. If you have to explain the joke to make it funny, then it's not funny. So if I'm going to describe an image and then make you like, that's not real comedy. Like, generally, I kind of just make observations or see what my reaction is to certain situations or things that have happened to me. And sometimes even like if it's like a negative thing could happen to me, and then I'll kind of put like a humoristic spin on it. This actually is helpful for me because I only have like seasons of comedy because, like I said, I only do the stand-up comedy when I'm visiting Canada. So if I only come once every year or once every 2 years, that's 12 or 24 months of material. And sometimes I'll feel like I'll go long stints where I haven't written a new joke or I haven't put anything new out there. And I'll kind of get a little worried. But then sometimes there'll just be a wave or like I'll have like the cargo airplane experience. Something will happen. And just from that one trip, I got like 4 or 5 jokes out of it. So
it sounds like for you, just waiting for things to happen is a good strategy because it sounds like a lot of things happen to you. So you're just you're living life out there. I don't know. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. And I approach it with the greatest help because like, I know if you pursue an art career, like there's a lot of pressure to constantly be putting stuff out there because I guess like you have to stay relevant. Like at least for me, since it's more of a side gig kind of thing, that I can give myself the luxury of waiting, or if I don't have anything new, like I don't have to go out there and I don't rely on it. So I guess it's not a pressure in my life, but I hope it stays that way because I don't think that I would enjoy like being pressured to put out something there that's funny. But yeah, so I guess my process is just living life and hoping something funny happens to me. I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna jump to a clip. I'll set it up, but if I missed anything, let me know. This is kind of during pandemic. You were doing Zoom comedy, and so I just want to give people like a sense of what you were kind of going through because you were working hard in a COVID ward at the time, or at least at the time you wrote these jokes, and it was just like kind of when we were in the thick of it. So we'll jump to that right now.
So you're probably wondering, like what it's like working, like as, I'm working in a hospital right now in a COVID ward, and I'm not going to lie, like being a frontline worker, like it's hard, but sometimes it's neat. I mean, the other day we got free Starbucks, which is really nice. I mean, it's really nice when companies perform concrete actions to thank us for our work. Not like the phone company that called me the other day to offer a faster internet package. And then in the same call told me they weren't going to come because I was in a high risk category. So, you know what? It's just so annoying, like having to go to work every day, wearing like a gas mask only for people to create, event with a description that says, "We're charging cover in order to pay for the possible fine." You know, like, these people are really lousy at following instructions. Like, I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen this everywhere. But there are some people that are wearing these masks and they go like just from the bottom lip to just on top of your nostrils. I've come up with a name for those and I call them face thongs. Face thongs 2020. I think that's going to be a thing.
That was great. Very brave, the Zoom comedy.
Thank you. Like,
so brave.
the thing is that Zoom comedy, it's very fulfilling for the people who hop on it and watch. But for us as stand-up comedians, like, the reaction that we want is just to feel the laughter in the room, right?
Yeah.
And I understood in the pandemic, we had to make do with what we had, but it was rewarding and funny for everyone except for us, right? Because it was just kind of putting out there, seeing a little bit like what people would enjoy. It was a very, very hectic time and we had to make do. And I guess now we're sort of returning to normalcy. Now they're like, the shows are back in full swing and things like that.
Yeah. And not much Zoom comedy happening, I've noticed.
It had a time and it had a place. And I think that now, unless there's another major global pandemic, I think that can just be laid to rest. I think
we can put it away now.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like the joke about getting Starbucks. I find that very funny because a lot of veterinary medicine is a bit like that. Like, we also experienced not the same. We weren't going through a COVID ward, treating patients in a COVID ward. So I don't want to create a false equivalence that I think veterinarians went through the same thing. But we sort of had our own issues that being short-staffed, everyone got a dog.
Oh, absolutely. I can imagine.
I think a third of households got pets. We didn't suddenly have more vets. We had less vets actually. So it was challenging in the same way. And then like very difficult time for across the spectrum of healthcare workers. But then like they would get us pizza. Like, oh, thank you. Like, it's just such a small gesture for what people are going through. And then for physicians in Peru working in a remote area in a COVID ward and be like, but you get a Starbucks. And also face thong is excellent. I love that. I wish it had caught on because it is excellent. And my observation, it was mostly men who would like have a mask pulled down and their whole nose was sticking out. And I'm like, why are you, even when it wasn't mandatory or when it was, I don't know. I was like, what are you doing? I don't understand. And I wish I had the terminology because I didn't at the time, but now I know it's called the face thong. So I have a question. You're a bit of a storyteller because that's its own craft. There's like stand-up comedy and there's storytelling and there's storytelling comics, but storytelling is its own, like if we think about The Moth or people who craft a story, is that something you do? Or is it, I do stand-up, but I like to tell stories when I do stand-up?
I didn't realize it for a while, but then when I would go back and watch clips of me doing, a lot of them would be stories because like I said, a lot of my joke writing process is on things that happened to me and kind of to set it up, like I have to tell the story. The thing is though, is that I've never like taken like classes or actually gone. So like I do have a long ways to go in terms of like organizing it, and setting it up. Like I'm sure like just like any artist, like just trying to improve, there's room for improvement. I do notice that a lot of my humor is storytelling. But the thing is, though, is that because like stand-up comedy, like people don't go to hear like a long story. And also you also worry a bit because like if you tell us like a story, you don't want to think that people like, oh, like you're so into yourself because you think your life or your experience is so interesting that you want us to sit and listen to it. So I try and kind of condense it as much as I possibly can. When people describe me, like, or think, oh, like Natalie, that was so funny. It's just because it's not so much that like I have like an art of comedy. It's just like what I had to live through was just so like funny or weird or whatever. There is certainly a storytelling element. It's quite challenging to try to kind of condense it into a joke.
I think you should give storytelling as its own. You're not here for my advice, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think you would be great at that.
Thank you,
so
Sarah.
I just want you to tell this joke because I think it's really funny. I'm going to try to set you up. You have a joke about people asking you for medical advice that I found hilarious.
In Canadian medicine, it's 4 years. And after you do undergrad or at least 3 years of an undergrad. And in Peru, you go straight in from high school and it's 7 years and you're trying to, and I would tell people, I would arrive in Canada, what year are you in? It's, oh, I'm in 6th year. But what does that mean? People would say, like, because here it's 4 years, like, where does that fit in the Canadian system? Look, pal, like, I have arrived at the part of my career where my friends, they send me dick pics and they're like, Natalie, should I go in and see a doctor? Do I have an STD? That's the part of my career that I'm in right now.
See, that's your level of training. I love that.
That's my level of training. That's
you're at the people sending you pictures of their genitals and you saying that requires some medical attention right now.
Yep. That is
once correct. My husband, he's a large animal vet, Steve. He was working in a dairy barn. I mean, this happens like we get asked for veterinary advice, but sometimes we get asked for like human medical advice, which we do not like that. I know doctors don't like it either, but veterinarians really don't like that. And Steve was like working on a cow and he turned the farmer had just had a vasectomy. And Steve turned around and he had dropped his pants, like dropped everything, dropped his coveralls and everything. And he was trying to show Steve, like, his testicles were so swollen that you couldn't see his penis. And he was like, should I go in? And Steve's like, yeah, like, you can't see your penis. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I think if your testicles are so swollen you can't see your penis, you probably should go in. That's
solid advice.
See, I don't even have a medical degree, like human medical degree. And I know that. Anyway, we laugh about that. We still laugh about that. It happened in Florida a lot because there's a lot of uninsured people. And we lived on a farm. So the farm workers would come and see my husband and they'd be like, hey, doc, what do you think of this? And he was just like, you need to go to a doctor. Like, no, we're not doing this. Oh my God. Yes. It sounds like stand up for you is like, right now, at least, it's like a fun hobby. It's an outlet for you. But in your wildest dreams, because you picked a career in medicine very young, before your brain was formed, if you could do stand up or an artistic pursuit full time for the same amount of money, would you leave medicine or would you keep doing both?
Oof, it's funny because, like I said, like when I was starting stand-up comedy, I was obviously thinking, like, wow, like, wouldn't it be so cool to headline Just for Laughs or JFL? And my mentor in comedy, Rebecca McDonald, oh, Natalie, like, no, like, have greater aspirations in life. I said, really? Like, I was really surprised. I thought that was like in Canadian comedy, like that was like the biggest thing. I have friends who are also in comedy and they're achieving amazing things, including JFL. I think for me, I enjoy medicine too much to leave it. I don't think that like I'm that much of a comedian that I would pursue it as a career. I see it like, as you said it perfectly. I see it more as an outlet. And I see it more than I do in my spare time. And the thing is that especially now coming here to Canada, like I'm asked a lot like what my hobby is. I was not raised in an outdoorsy kind of family. So never into camping or hiking or canoeing or those types of things that I know that a lot of Canadians are into. But where does that leave me? And I realized that I was more of an indoorsy kind of person, but and definitely more of a city person. Outlet, that's what I like to do in my spare time. So when people ask like what my hobby is, like I tell them like I'm really into writing comedy and writing. And I also write non-funny things too. So it's just something that I really enjoy. And so I would not see myself, I definitely don't see myself up there like with like the pros or ever being there. And I think that that's okay. Like, you don't have to be the best at everything.
No, I really love that because this is just for you, right? It's not wherever it goes, it goes. Because a lot of the healthcare professionals, myself included, were very competitive. And I found when I've done comedy, like when it was with my non-veterinary friends, they're like, did you have fun? And if my veterinary friends ask me, they go, did you win? It wasn't a competition, but everything is, right? For some people, everything is. And so, and I think it's hard sometimes to push that competitive side down. And my husband is always reminding me, he's like, it's fun, right? You do it for fun. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of want to win. So I love that. I love your attitude. I love that you're like, hey, this is just an outlet for me. I've got a stressful job. I love that. I think that's great. So if you're cool with it, we'll put your Instagram handle in our show notes. Is there anything you want to promote or ways people can come see you, or is Instagram the best way to find you?
I think Instagram would be the best. If I'm asked if I have a page, I don't have like a comedy page, but on Instagram, if I will be out and about, or if I have a show coming up or a publication coming up, like it will be on there. So hopefully people.
Okay. All right. So we are at the last question. I hope you've given this some thought, Natalie, because it's important. So I really want to get Dr. Ken Jeong to come on my podcast. So the last question for every guest on Co-Medicine is now you're not talking to everyone. You're only speaking to Dr. Ken Jeong. But if you could speak to Ken to ask him to come on this podcast, what would you tell him to invite him on?
Please come on Sarah's podcast. She's very funny. And you will enjoy being interviewed by her. You have to do it. And if you don't do it, then you'll make a bunch of teacup Yorkshire Terriers very sad. So please do this.
All right, Ken, you heard it from Dr. Tinney, one of your colleagues, even though he doesn't practice medicine anymore, but still, you're still one of his colleagues. So I appreciate you inviting Ken on the show. Appreciate you and your story. I think you're an absolute delight. I love talking to you. And thank you so much for being here. We'll have some show notes so people can know how to find you. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It was a pleasure. And I really enjoy, I'm looking forward to listening to the upcoming episodes, just seeing more overlap of comedians and medicine. I think this will be great. Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. And that wraps up this episode of Co-Medicine. I've been Dr. Sarah Boston. Thank you so much for listening. I just want to give a big shout out to our exclusive title sponsor, Hill's Pet Nutrition, for helping to make this podcast possible and for supporting veterinarians and initiatives like this. Really, literally couldn't do it without you. I want to thank musical genius and stand-up comedian Mark Edwards for making music that somehow makes me laugh. I don't know how he does it. Please check out his info in his show notes. He is a stand-up comedian and actor. He's absolutely hilarious. And big thank you to my producer, Heather McPherson from Twisted Spur Media, who just seems to make everything work and everything sound great. And I also couldn't do this podcast without her. Thank you for listening. I hope you're having as much fun as I am. That might actually be hard because I am obsessed with this podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please let us know, let your friends know, give us likes and nice comments, do all the things, help support this new podcast. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, I don't know what you're still doing here. You know what? If you didn't enjoy it, you can just do nothing. Nothing would be good. We will see you next episode. Thank you.